Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang Dhammang Sanghang Namasami. So Saturday, 14th of February. So it's pretty much right in the middle of our annual 3-month winter retreat that we're observing now. It's so tomorrow is for a great many of the, for most of the male monastic community, a lodgings change. So those forest dwellers, they'll move in to the main property, and main property dwellers will move out. Also this week coming, so starting on this 17th, I guess, we need to do our annual midwinter retreat, restocking the firewood, making sure there's enough firewood in all the various places so we can stay warm, including in this room. And so it's a very different kind of mode that we'll be in many ways. From the retreat routine that we've been observing, which has been one of very, very much in either solitary retreat or group practice retreat, or a mixture of the two. So we'll be engaged a lot more. And personally, I think this is a really good aspect, a very helpful aspect to the retreat here at Chithurst. I've been here now. This will be my eighth winter retreat here, and I think it's actually helpful for our practice. It's my own opinion. We can really, we need to engage more, but how much of our practice changes? Right? Does mindfulness change? Maybe the object that we're mindful of changes, but does actually the reality of mindfulness, that function, whatever we want to call it, does consciousness change? Does kindness change? Generosity? Do the Dhamma teachings change? So these are, I'll just leave them hanging as questions. So on the first morning so on Tuesday morning, for the resident community, we'll have a communal breakfast, like we normally have on Saturdays during the regular year, but we'll have a communal breakfast, and I'll offer more reflections on maybe, encouragements on how we can really utilize this week that we're entering, really utilize it for our benefit, long-lasting benefit and welfare. So tonight I thought I'd reflect. I came across a very short sutta a few days ago from the Angutara Nikkaya, the numerical discourses. It's in the Book of the Threes, and in Pali it's called the Lekha Sutta, and it's translated as Inscriptions. And it hinges around the emotion of anger. But this is not a talk about anger. But I was touched by I started reflecting after reading the sutta at sort of the core, part of the core of it. And so it's a short sutta, and it talks about 3 types of people. 3 types of people, and the first being people that are like an inscription on rock. So people that are like an inscription on rock, and rock. So when they have a feeling of anger, and like an inscription on rock, it is not. It stays a long time. It's not easily washed away. Like an inscription on rock, the wind and rain and things like that don't easily wash away an inscription on rock. It takes a long time. And so somebody is like that, when they're angered, their anger lasts a long time. And the second type of person is like an inscription in the earth, in earth. And so earth washes away, so an inscription on earth would wash away pretty quickly with wind and rain. And so the second type of person is somebody who is easily angered, but their anger washes away very quickly. It fades away very quickly. And the third type of person is like a person it's like something inscribed in water. So if somebody, says things to them which are hurtful or painful or agitating, normally agitating, they remain perfectly congenial, perfectly calm, because it's just like writing in water. There's nothing left. Nothing happens. Just writing. No residue of any sort of emotion. So, as I mentioned, I was using these images. It's more the images that struck me than the actual emotion, although it is I find a very good sutta to reflect on. That, if we are, if triggered into sort of feelings of anger, and let's face it, folks, it's a human emotion, right? And how many of us would be able to put up our hand and say we've never experienced anger? So maybe somebody, not me. And so, but it was those images of things that last a long time and things that don't last. And so, for instance, using anger, the emotion of anger is that it's a habit. If we respond in certain ways, triggered by anger, the spark is very human, and so are the responses. But we can, if we don't fuel sparks, if we don't feed sparks, if we don't give them any fuel, it dies right there. And that's for those of you who have heard me give talks before, maybe you've heard me talk about that fueling of things. And so if we are habitually fueling emotions, fueling so that certain responses are fueled and fed, and they can be sustained longer and increased. But I want to now flip it around, is that we can use these images in a positive sense around also habitual responses or habitual ways of being. So there's certain things I would suggest in life that, let's inscribe it in rock. Like our habits of, like I was using these words earlier, just a few minutes ago, habits of generosity, habits of kindness, habits of helpfulness, habits of attention, habits of mindfulness. Take any positive aspect of life and practice, our spiritual practice, and to that habitual, making habits, so that these are our habits, and and we can replace old habits. We can make a new habit of not following old habits, even if sparks of old reactions to things or old responses come up. So maybe our conditioning, because we're conditioned from our previous days and nights as a living being, whether it's in this life or a previous life or whatever. We are conditioned, but conditioning is not. It doesn't just stop. we can condition ourselves to then create good habits, to change the grooves of habitual formation, like sankharas, which is often translated from the Pali into variously into formations, mental formations, but also at one time there was a fairly well used translation was habitual formations, habitual reactions and actions and responses. And so, without choosing, which translation is right or wrong, or better or worse, I thought that was quite interesting. Is that those habitual ways of relating to things. So yes, if we are prone to something negative, can we change? If we find that maybe some of our responses are a bit more inscribed in stone, then we can work on that. We can address that through mindfulness, through that comprehending, through that discernment of feeling those things. Instead of just blowing it off and going, well, this is me, this is my personality, so that's that. No, we can. It's not that we're trying to change our personality, but we can change the way we relate to stimulus, the way we relate to sense impressions. And so things that on the negative spectrum, things that maybe are carved more in stone, or maybe they're in earth, but can we make a habit of flowing like the writing in water, that image? That's what I really was struck by that image. Can we just flow? Can we be like that when it comes to things which are challenging, which are maybe more detrimental or unwholesome, the kilesas? So if a feeling of greed, a feeling of anger, hatred, a feeling of confusion, can we be able to just learn to let them go as they come? So it's sparks with no fuel. Sparks with no fuel. But then, here again, flipping it around, taking to cultivate, like we take, for instance, the Brahma Viharas, the sublime abidings that we often chant, loving kindness, compassion, empathetic joy, and equanimity. These heart states, these are to be cultivated. These can be brought into being and be part of our habitual way of abiding. And so then to me, and then the way my mind went, let's etch those in stone, not easily washed away by wind and rain. Oh, but okay, over time, I haven't really been emphasizing that. I haven't fully developed a foundation in this, which is really solid. It's maybe wearing down a little bit. What do we do? Like when something is inscribed, and then it starts to fade. Well, get out the chisel, get out the hammer, get a steady hand and reinscribe it. So that's why practice is a lifelong endeavor. Why do you see, people that are like, even considered by many people as being, who have completed the path, and then you see them meditating. You see them studying the Dhamma. You see them out doing walking meditation. You see them reflecting. So to not just, think, well, I've developed that and then move on. So then we make those are our habits of being. That's our habit of being. And I find my own experience of 24 years of monastic life, which might sound like a long time, but when you meet people, even in this room, that have been in monastic life nearly twice as long, or I've just come back from Thailand. I went along to pay respects to a deceased monk. His coffin was in the monastery, and in glass coffin, refrigerated, and you could go and pay respects. And he'd been a monk. He was 101 when he died. a few months ago, and he'd been a bhikkhu for 82 vasa, 82 rains retreats. And he'd been a novice before that. And so paying respects to go, and so somebody who had really developed the practice and had still continued to practice. Right? So that's a long time. So in my 24 years of monastic life, I find one of the most helpful things is community life. Community life. Because there are different expressions of monastic life. We can live on our own, we can live in small groups, we can live in large groups, we can live in medium groups. And we can, especially after our junior training, the first 7 years of training, maybe a year as an anagarika, 1 or 2 years, and years novice, years of junior nun, junior bhikkhu, and then after about 7 years, we're usually released from that period of depending on your teacher. And you can maybe go live, maybe if situation comes up, could live on your own, or you could live in a smaller group, live in a much smaller community. What I like about community life is that there's routine, and that giving ourselves over and creating habits, like the habit of getting up in the morning. Right? It's not easy to, especially midwinter. I mean, getting up at 4 in the morning for a 5 a.m. puja. Not easy. I mean, even, tonight is a very lovely dry evening, but, when it's, windy and rainy, and there's some of our monks and nuns, they're living in the forest, or coming up from a loka cottage, in the dark, muddy track, coming up here. But just that habit of, okay, it's not comfortable, but I'm going to get up. 4 a.m., 4:30, whatever time, I get up. Create that practice, that habit of practice, the habit of precepts. I mean, living all together, following precepts. We have this common agreement to live in harmony by following precepts. If we blow it, then we make amends to that. If we make a mistake and break a precept, that's our habit. A habit of honesty, a habit of openness, a habit of all of it. Diligence. Just there's so many aspects to living in community. Family is a great place to practice. I mean, the give and take, the having to let go of self-centered desire. And so that's the thing in community. If we were just, 20 monks and nuns and, 10 or 12, 15 lay people living here, all just doing our own thing all the time. Well, there are communities like that. There are, and I'm not going to, I've never lived in one. I'm not going to, kind of weigh in on that. But I find that commonality of cooperating. So, for instance, during this week coming, there's going to be every day here there's cooperation, but there's going to be a little bit more heightened cooperation in terms of moving firewood. It's usually many hands on deck. Maybe you have 10, 12 or more people working together, functioning together. You got, what do you get? 3, 4, 5 people in the kitchen. That's cooperation. And, we're here in these environments, for instance, in a community like this, where we're encouraged to use everything as practice. So it's not just, coming in here, chanting, sitting meditation. Is it, really every opportunity is one of being, open and aware and mindful. And in community, that such a common, well-used, kind of almost catchy phrase for the last 20 or 30 years. Oh, you got to let go. It's about letting go. Well, yeah. So letting go, community is a great place for letting go. I find if I'm living in my, if I get a month up in the forest, up in Hammer Wood, and hardly have to engage with anybody or anything. Yeah, I mean, there's still a lot of letting go to do. There's all the inner habits and stuff rumbling around from lifetimes of unskillful habits, habitual thinking. But in terms of contact with other people and other things, it's really easy. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that we shouldn't do that, because by going into solitude, like we get a chance to do here as a monastic community, we get to simplify things, and there isn't so much engagement, and stuff can bubble up. Stuff can bubble up, come to the surface. I was speaking with one of the other community members about this just recently, and they were just expressing, how grateful they were that some certain things, they started seeing certain things, and then you can address that. So it's utilizing all of these different opportunities that, for instance, in our community, where we get engagement, we get more engagement, less engagement, more group practice, less group practice, solitude, and group, more group dynamic things. And so we're kind of approaching or experiencing different opportunities to practice these teachings. And so I know. So I'm not somebody who encourages just endless periods of solitude. That's just me, and I'm not saying I'm right. I'm absolutely not saying I'm right. But I certainly encourage, manageable periods of solitude, and each person has probably a different threshold around that. But I think that blend of engagement and non-engagement is really valuable, for us to be able to see, because here again, like I've noticed in myself, if I get into solitude for quite a long time, it's very useful. I really encourage it, and I always look forward to it. But there's certain things get a little bit dull in my practice, a little bit dull, and so having a certain amount of engagement, I think, is very valuable. So yeah, utilizing the routines that we have here. So utilizing everything, So, because some communities in the world, and I'll take away the word Buddhist, spiritual communities, they may be set up where, really sort of dedicated spiritual practitioners don't have to do anything. I know somebody who was a monk, a Buddhist monk in Burma. Twice for 1 year periods. 1 year, and then he disrobed, and then he went back again about 3 years later and did another year. And just the way their setup is that they didn't have to do anything, just eat and meditate. That was it. No chores, no, and I'm not, and this is going to sound like I'm judging that. Maybe I am a little bit, but. I'm not really wanting to judge it, because it's obviously, and their teacher there is a magnificent teacher, and one of the very well known and very effective teacher. That's the way he set it up. So it has to have value. But at least my friend said there were certain things really lacking. He found, because it was just literally just eat. And they were expected to meditate for about 18 hours a day. And that was it. There were no Dhamma talks that he could understand. There weren't many Dhamma talks, he said. And he felt that, and I think it was maybe one of the reasons why he didn't remain in monastic life there. So here, and at least the style that we're handed down from Ajahn Chah, which this is firmly an Ajahn Chah branch monastery, that there's stuff to do, and it is practice. While I was in Thailand, I stayed at Wat Pah Nanachat probably for a total of 13 days, divided into two different periods, beginning and end. And then going over many, many times to Wat Pah Pong, Ajahn Chah's monastery. And that blend of activity and solitude, activity and quietude, this creates good habits of being able to see the inscriptions on our, if we've got some inscriptions on our rock, on our inner rock, which are unwholesome, to be able to see those. Going back to the original part of this the sutta that I read or spoke about this evening. Yeah, like are we easily angered? And if we start to see that, then don't feel depressed. Don't feel let down. Don't feel inferior. Feel good. If we see anything on the unwholesome scale, any habit like that or that we're having, really be gladdened that we're actually seeing that. Because one delusion, so often in Buddhism, because it's talk about the three things: greed, hatred, and delusion or confusion. And greed and hatred are easier to see. Delusion, because of delusion, it's because we're deluded. It's hard to see. We can delude ourselves into thinking we don't have that, and so, or not have anger or greed. And there's this delusion, confusion. And so this is why, using meditation, using mindfulness, using stillness, but not being bound by or limited by having to have stillness and formal meditation to be aware of these things. Mindfulness is always a mindfulness, whether we're sitting, standing, walking, or lying down. Mindfulness can be developed. Mindfulness can be used. We can see the heart, see the mind. That's what it's for. And so, in one of the short readings I was doing from Ajahn Chah, if we get stuck. We just get kind of stuck in in the delight of stillness. Instead of using it, there's a word in the English translation in the suttas of, to use it is to the mind and heart become wieldy, malleable, and we can direct that mindfulness, that stillness, that clarity. We can direct that towards really seeing the heart and mind and seeing what needs to be let go of, seeing what needs to be brought into being, seeing what needs to be increased, seeing all these different things. So these are the right efforts in the Buddha Dhamma. But we need to see. So use that clarity and mindfulness. Then cultivating these good habits. Seeing the inscriptions on our rock, or the inscriptions in the soil that are maybe lingering things that are painful for ourselves and others, and then seeing the inscriptions that we have of beautiful habits, the beautiful things in our inner being, and keep them, keep the rock clean. Like sometimes, we might have signs here or something, or there's a rock inscription, not so much here, but maybe it's getting a bit overgrown, and so there's a little bit of moss or something. We should get a brush out and scrub it up. So keep cultivating, keep our Dhamma world, the wholesome Dhamma world, keep it in shape. Tending it like tending a beautiful garden. We need to tend the garden. We can't just get it right and then walk away. Just to close off, I don't want this to go on too long, to maybe reflect on these images that I shared. Maybe use these images. And this is what I like about the Dhamma. We've got the words, we've got the sutta and the sort of core meanings and the traditional and correct interpretations of that. But then we can use teachings for reflection. Use some certain aspects, even just pull out a little aspect of a teaching to reflect other aspects of Dhamma. And so I do encourage that, to making sure that we stay true. Don't just kind of make up some different story from the suttas or change it. In no way am I trying to reinterpret the Lekha Sutta. We're just using it as a springboard for this reflection tonight. So I'll close here. Now let us make the four boundless qualities shine forth. I will abide, pervading one quarter with a heart imbued with loving kindness. Likewise the second, likewise the third, likewise the fourth. So above and below, around and everywhere, and to all as to myself, I will abide, pervading the all-encompassing world with a heart imbued with loving kindness, abundant, exalted, immeasurable, without hostility and without ill will. I will abide, pervading one quarter with a heart imbued with compassion. Likewise the second, likewise the third, likewise the fourth. So above and below, around and everywhere, and to all as to myself, I will abide, pervading the all-encompassing world with a heart imbued with compassion, abundant, exalted, immeasurable, without hostility and without ill will. I will abide, pervading one quarter with a heart imbued with gladness. Likewise the second, likewise the third, likewise the fourth. So above and below, around and everywhere, and to all as to myself, I will abide, pervading the all-encompassing world with a heart imbued with gladness, abundant, exalted, immeasurable, without hostility and without ill will. I will abide, pervading one quarter with a heart imbued with equanimity. Likewise the second, likewise the third, likewise the fourth. So above and below, around and everywhere,
and to all as to myself. I will abide, pervading the all-encompassing world, with a heart imbued with equanimity, abundant, exalted, immeasurable, without hostility and without ill will.
Page 16 in the dark brown book will be the closing homage in Pali and English.